We're back on with Luke Larson discussing the 7 JSS or IP stations that Lima 37 occupied in 2007 when it did a relief in place with Battalion 16.
So within the first 3 months of our second deployment, we had moved into these 10-man augmentation team police stations and joint security stations throughout the city. And what we saw was this is just a lot more, this is a better model to live out there with the people, because now we're integrated with them to the point we get personal relationships with the Iraqi police. And Act 4 of the books, chapters 13 through 18, really just kind of showcase the rest of that deployment. Chapter 13 is called Rank is Nothing and Talent is Everything. And that's one of the 28 articles from David Cullen's essay, where he basically gives company level advice on how to conduct counterinsurgency. One of the things we found is, some lieutenants got it, others did not. Some sergeants got it, others did not. And so in this model, ideally a lieutenant was the augmentation team leader. But we had several IP stations where we had sergeants, staff sergeants, and corporals doing it just because they were just fit the bill better. They had a better understanding of counterinsurgency and whatnot. So at chapter 13, the Sergeant Nate is based off two NCOs, Corporal one of them is Sergeant Humphrey, and the other one is Corporal James. Corporal James and Sergeant Humphrey were both augmentation team leaders. So a corporal and a sergeant have the same responsibility that a lieutenant does, and 3 of our augmentation team leaders were first lieutenants. And the responsibility that an augmentation team leader had was almost, they only have 10 Marines, but they have 100 Iraqi police. So their like role and responsibility is probably closer aligned to that of a company commander and even battalion commander than a traditional platoon commander. So this augmentation team leader now has 10 Marines, which may have 1 or 2 NCOs and then PFCs and Lance Corporals, and they're effectively running a police station with 100 people. And so this training team not only is responsible for the Iraqi police employment, they're also conducting economic operations where they're trying to do reconstruction projects, essential services where they're doing the reconstruction projects to fix sewer, water, electricity, academics, medical, trash. So the amount of stuff that these guys are doing is well outside of what they're taught at their schools, be it IOC or School of Infantry.
So the character Nate is partially based on Sergeant Humphrey.
It's based off Sergeant Humphrey and Corporal James' role. Basically, Cap Mine said, "Hey, if this guy's going to be an augmentation team leader, I'm going to frock him to lieutenant, and he's going to be treated like a lieutenant."
Okay. And you have a quotation there from a Colonel Turner. What does he say, and what is the context of that statement?
This quote, Colonel Turner, on April 20th, 2007, was trying to explain to the Marines on advanced party how significant the change in Ramadi was, because 2005 we were taking contact 9 times a day, and he's like, "Gentlemen, what we're seeing here is not some random lone violence. this is a revolution, and the men in this battalion are standing in the crease of history. And it really was a revolution, the awakening. These people stood up and kicked out, Al Qaeda that was oppressing them.
Okay, and then the other reading that you refer to there, you refer to Victor Krulak's book, which is
First to Fight.
First to Fight, and Victor Krulak was a Marine general with service beginning in World War II and then extending through Vietnam when he was the commanding general of Fleet Marine Force Pacific, and then he wrote about the adaptation or the adoption of the Marine Combined Action Platoon program in Vietnam. And so can you quote from that and just kind of give us the significance of that?
Yeah, I thought this in the last half of that book, First to Fight, he does a phenomenal job talking about the Combined Action Platoon and how these were being employed in Vietnam. Bing West's book, The Village, also is an incredible historical document of how the Marines handled Combined Action Platoon. In this book, First to Fight, he talks about how this wasn't a new idea. The Marines had done this in Haiti in 1915. They'd done it in Nicaragua in 1926. They'd done it in Santo Domingo in 1916. And then they did it again in Vietnam in the late 60s and early 70s. And I think that's important when we're going through schools and task organizations and stuff, we're set up on a baseline model. When you get into a situation where you're conducting operations, it's in the history of the Marine Corps that we adapt to the situation we're placed in. And I think earlier in the war, in 2005, we were hesitant to break away from the third generation model that is really based off World War I and World War II type tactics. And it took us 2 or 3 years to realize, like, hey, we should probably change this up and go to a more distributed ops type TO. Now, currently, I know Marine battalions are going through half of their training set up conventionally, and then they will train in a distributed op manner where they're training these like 10-man teams. 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines deployed to Afghanistan. Their entire battalion was broke down into augmentation teams. 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, which ripped out with the battalion that ripped us out, their entire battalion was broke down into augmentation teams. So I think it shows that the Marine Corps is willing to adapt to change the fight. Although we were hesitant to do it in 2005.
So can you, on the map, walk us through each one of the 7 stations where an augmentation team was deployed and kind of orient us? Well, first of all, your role when you went into the 2007 deployment was now as an executive officer, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And so you had a broader view of what was going on in the company, right?
Yes, when we deployed in 2007, I moved from 3rd Platoon Commander to be executive officer for a rifle company. And this is, our company staff needed to now, instead of having like traditional 4 units underneath us, now we have 7 units broke down, 10-man teams. We've increased our company headquarters to facilitate the administration of all these other units, and we've really reorganized our company staff to mirror a battalion staff, because if you take all of the Marines, attachments, and Iraqis underneath our company, we had over 1,000 people, which is not your standard TO for a rifle company. My role as the executive officer, one of my collateral duties was to do CMO, which is civil military operations. And what we saw is now that we're combined with the police, we're conducting security ops. We need to give the people other things, essential services, economic opportunity, and in General Petraeus's FMF 3-TAC-24 counterinsurgency manual, he outlines this in 5 logical lines of operations, which are known as the 5 L's. And so, as a military fighting a counterinsurgency, we can't just fight two-dimensionally at the tactical and operational level. We now need to operate at these different levels of the 5 L's, which would be security.
Hold on a second.